Welcome to everyone to our financial statement presentation this evening from Church Windows. My name is Mary Lou Turnbull. First of all, just a little disclaimer. I am not a CPA. I am studying accounting currently, and so I do that in my spare time when I'm not working at Church Windows. I also have been a trainer for over 10 years with the company, and I like nothing more than to go out and teach people how to use the program and just help with some of the concepts in using our software. As you can see from my splash screen tonight that we are now on the web, and hopefully you've seen our press releases and our information about our web presence. It's called Church Windows Web, and you can access it from anywhere using all the cool devices that are available nowadays. So we're really excited about this new offering and hope that a lot of our customers can take advantage of that, and as well new customers coming in maybe were always looking for a web program, so now they can use Church Windows. So that's absolutely great. I'm just going to show you a couple of slides here to get started in our program. I went ahead and researched a document that you might find useful, and hopefully we'll be able to get this recording out to you so that you could look up this website. But it's part of the Securities Exchange Commission, so it's a public document, and it talks about the different financial statements that are used typically in profit companies. So what I want to do tonight is compare, basically, if you're used to a profit environment, and I'm sure a lot of you are from that environment, and how do the Church Windows statements relate to that environment. So the four statements that we're going to be talking about tonight are down the right-hand side of the screen: balance sheet, treasurer's report, statement of cash activity, and the fund activity report. If you were in business, on the left-hand side you'll see balance sheet, that's the same. Income statement, we use the treasurer's report as the name for that. Cash flow statement, this one differs a little bit from the statement of cash activity, and I'm going to go ahead and explain that a little bit later on in our presentation. The shareholders equity as well would be a corporation that had shareholders. Another name for that is owner's equity or retained earnings if you're in the profit world. Again, we're here at churches, and so we have what's called funds. We have different pots of money that are set aside to keep track of our money and our funds. So we call ours a fund activity report. So this is just kind of an outline and a guide to the four topics, the four statements that we're going to be talking about tonight. The next slide is one that I designed hopefully to make it a little bit easier to understand how our structure, our chart of accounts, fits into the various reports that we have to use and are available to us here at Church Windows. First one up on the left, you can see balance sheet. Made up of three different types of accounts: assets, liabilities, and fund balances. I'm going to show you the structure of where those are set up in our Church Windows program. Down below that you can see the treasurer's report. That is the one that contains the income and expense accounts. That's typically called a profit and loss or an income statement, again if you're out in business. And then over here on the right-hand side, you'll see the fund activity report. Let me see if I can just get my little highlighter going here and highlight. There we go. Yeah, I like having fun with this thing. I'm not really one to use it a lot, but yeah, the fund activity report, as you can see, basically funnels the fund balances, then adds information from the treasurer's report, both your income and your expense accounts, and then comes up with a final fund balance, which ironically enough funnels back into the balance sheet. So what we're hoping to achieve tonight is kind of a cycle of how everything fits together so that we can understand a little bit better when we try to read our reports and interpret what they're saying. Again, up top here is called the cash activity. So I'm just going to try to highlight that one too. There we go, cash activity. And as you can see, that pertains directly to your cash accounts or your assets on your balance sheet. So those are basically, in a nutshell, the four different types of reports that we're going to be discussing this evening. So I'm going to jump right into, I'm not going to spend time in PowerPoint slides. I'm going to try to get right into the meat of the matter and get into our report. You can see now our Church Windows main splash screen. And this is the main screen of Church Windows that you all are probably very familiar with. And we're going to go specifically right into the accounting area and discuss how all of these reports fit together. I do want to make a little bit of a disclaimer at the beginning of our presentation, and that is we're not going to spend a whole lot of time talking about how we get to produce the reports. That is the subject of a lot of our classes online, so I just want to put a little plug in for those. There are some trainers in the room, so we'd be happy to have you purchase our classes that are recorded online. It's using the same technology as you see tonight, and you can purchase a class online by signing up for it on the website, and you'll get some informational material, some instruction with all of those topics for accounting and the rest of the Church Windows program. So I do want to at least mention that tonight. Our goal is to be able to understand and read what the reports are telling us. That's really the main focus of what we're going to be talking about tonight. Do want to have a little bit of fun too, not all boring accounting stuff. And as I talked with one of our CPAs on staff here, she said, Mary Lou, you know, financial statements aren't that riveting, so maybe, you know, it's not going to be a barrel of laughs for the people that are involved in the webinar this evening. But anyway, we'll try to have a little bit of fun too. So let's go ahead and take a look at those structure that I talked about before, the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 situation. The reason that this is really important is because in order to understand financial statements, you kind of have to understand how all the accounts fit together. When we look at our chart of accounts here in Church Windows, you can see we can collapse them and everything goes right underneath 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, just as I identified on that PowerPoint slide. The number 1 accounts over here on the left, those stand for assets. So we can open up that screen and you can see all of the assets we have listed. These are defined as things the church owns, OWN. The good financial statement format usually requires that those are in order of liquidity, which means how easily they're turned into cash. So you can see here our most liquid ones are on top, and then as they become more long-term, they go down to the bottom. Down here at the bottom we have land and buildings, furniture and equipment. Those are termed usually fixed assets. So those are your more permanent assets that you have. And again, those are defined as things the church owns, OWN. Okay, liabilities are next here. I'm going to go ahead and close out of my assets. These are things that the church owes, OWE. Again, if you do, even after the webinar, print out that security document that I mentioned, it does have the 4 different statements, and it does agree with me here on the fact that assets are things the church owns, liabilities are what you owe. Typically, you've got your payroll taxes and such, your accounts payable, trade payables, pass-through accounts. These are kind of unique to churches. And then down below we have our more long-term liabilities such as mortgages. So these are basically what you're going to pay to someone else. So you collect the money. In the cases of payroll, our payroll program does a good job of that. It actually puts the money, transfers it from payroll into these liability accounts. They're held until you pay them to the government. And now we're doing that electronically, whereas before we used to do that with checks, usually paid to the bank. So the fund balances, this is probably the biggest difference in church accounting versus the corporate world or profit accounting. So as you can see here, we have a bunch of different funds that have been defined. Of course, most churches have their general operating fund here. We've got building, education. These are basically different pots of money that represent who the money belongs to. What we like to say is up here in the assets, this is where the money is at the bank, but down below in the fund balances, this is whose money it is. does the education or the mission fund have, how much money do they have? And that's what we're going to find out when we look at the balance sheet and we see these three types of accounts. Down below here then we have income and expenses. Income actually bring money into the fund balances, so they are related to the funds. And then expense accounts, they pay money out of the funds. So the fund balances go up and down by the income and expenses that are attached to them. So if I highlight on one of these funds, for example, I'm going to use the building fund a lot tonight in my presentation. If I look over here under the tree view, and you can do this too with your chart of accounts when you get out of the webinar, you can see over here we have a nice hierarchy structure that tells us in the building fund, for example, we have money coming in through income accounts that start with that number 4, as we saw on the left, and then expense accounts number 5 that pay money out of the building fund. Really, a lot of accounting is about your setup and your structure. If you don't have things set up correctly, if you don't have income, for example, you're not going to have a very thorough or meaningful income statement, or as we call it, treasurer's report. So a lot of these things are really important at the get-go when you're getting started with Church Windows. So one of the things I do want to mention too is about live webs that we offer, which use this very technology. And if your church was experiencing problems, above and beyond the normal support calls, and they wanted to make use of that technology, it's a great way for us to help you. And that's billed by the hour. So you can have this very service at your individual church if you want to. Okay, so that's kind of the setup on the structure. I think this tree view is just really helpful for people if you've never looked at that before. Take a look at the money going in and out of your fund balances. We can even have sub-funds as well. Lots of different variety on how you want to present your information. I do want to mention as well that depending on your church, there's many different churches in the room tonight, which we're really grateful for and thankful for. A lot of the level of detail that you need may vary greatly from church to church. So what I'm going to explain tonight is kind of the, keep it short and simple principle, the KISS principle. I want to just show some basic kinds of reports and how they integrate so that you can apply that to your church, but yours could be more complicated. You could have a much larger chart of accounts. You could have a much larger fund balance grouping here too. So